It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha. Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's version of the Brouhaha. And it's somewhat of a homecoming version, as our prodigal, wandering son, Dale McKee, has made his way back into the fold and is here live and in person. Good to see you, Dale.
Man, you know, it's always... You remember John Havlicek?
Yes, I do.
Celtics. You know, his claim to fame was... He was the best number 6 player in the NBA for years. He finally got his chance, you know. So I really appreciate somebody like Charlie Britton. Charlie Britton is my John Havlicek.
He is. That's a great way. You know,
just come in and he could fill in for you. I consider you the coach. He could come in and just coach the team up.
Charlie's can get it now.
Yeah,
he's good. He's smooth as silk.
Yeah,
boy.
I listened to the show last week. And of course, I could probably work with him, make him a little bit better. But he's getting there. He's getting there.
He's come a long way.
He has. Yeah. We just have to keep, getting him.
Well,
give him a little playing time. Give him a little playing time every now and then.
That's right. He's a John Havlicek of the Brouhaha.
There you go.
Number 17? Was that his number? What was Havlicek's number at Boston?
No, it couldn't have been 17 because 17 is illegal. 16 through 19 is illegal in basketball jerseys.
I did not know that. Why is that?
I don't know. I mean, it was at one time. There's no telling now. We'll look it up. But when I was coaching junior high, you couldn't order jerseys 6 through 9 or 16 through 19 or 26 through 29 or 36 through. I mean, you just couldn't do it. I mean, it was a technical foul.
Okay,
it's a technical foul on the player every time he comes into the game.
Well, in basketball, I'm deferring to you. I'm just asking. You see them. The officials use numbers in a lot of the things they do, 1-and-1s and things like that. Would that?
I think that's what the rule is. Now, like I said, I think that's still the same rule in amateur sports. I'm not sure about the NBA because, you got 0-0s now and this thing that we used to not have back in the day, I don't think. Was Bill Russell a 0 or?
Yeah, I don't know. He could have been.
He could be any number he wanted. I'll take that number, Red.
Yeah.
But
I guess my question is: do you think that the reason the numbers has something to do with the officials using their hands? And stuff?
Yeah. Well, basketball's changed so much. I was talking to a man that this was 50 years ago, and he was talking to me about high school basketball back in the day, and he played for a team that was really good back in the day, and this man I was talking to was a very tall man. He was like 6'3", 6'4", so even for that time back probably in the 1930s or 40s when he played basketball, the height is not what it is today, know. And of course, we got so many more people in the world now, and so many more people in America. I think the population's almost, I don't know, I was hearing something on the radio the other day and said the population of the United States was around 200 million in 1968, and now it's 341 million. So the population just keeps exploding. Well, if it's almost 141, that means in probably 5 to 10 years, our population in the United States will have doubled since 68 or 1970. Mm-hmm. So every 50 years, we're going to go through this. But he was telling me about basketball, and he said back in the day when he played, you went back to the center court and tipped off after every basket, no matter what team made the basket. So he said, I had a distinct advantage because of my height. He was like 6'3" or 4", like I told you. And he said, I would win the majority of the tips unless somebody mishandled the ball that I was tipping to,
Yeah.
or something like this. And of course, he said the scores were real low scoring during that time too, and things like that. So sports has revolved, but we keep up with college football and pro football, and you notice how the rules have changed so much.
Yeah.
I've seen it change in high school basketball, the way they call the game now. They let them get away with a lot more stuff than when I played that we could get away with.
Yeah.
I don't know what traveling or walking or ever what that is. I don't know. I don't think they call it anymore. I think, hey, you got the ball, you running with it, great. Don't matter. Oh no, don't worry about dribbling. No, I say that in a little bit of humor, but it's not as tough as it was.
Yeah.
As the calls are not.
Yeah.
In any way.
Though, what they say, when the going gets tough, tough get going.
Yes.
Speaking of which, we got a guest tonight,
We do.
and he's going to get us going. So who is our guest tonight, Dale?
Well, I'm gonna give you a first name.
All right.
Just a first name.
Okay.
Sam.
Sam. And where is Sam from, and what does Sam do?
Well, that's what we're gonna find out.
Oh, it's
tonight.
we call him a guy named Sam,
Yeah.
and we're going to talk to him and see what happens.
Well, Sam is a little mystery to most Mississippians. I've met him a few times,
Yeah.
and his base of operations now is around Hattiesburg. But we're gonna let him explain everything that he does.
Well, I tell you what. Without further ado.
Well, now Sam deals with sports now.
Okay.
He's
That's a plus.
He's a sports writer.
See, we got a sports
and
show.
he's got knowledge.
Okay.
Okay, he's got knowledge.
Well, I don't know if we can use him or not, but anyway, let's see what happens. We're going to take a break there from a sponsor, and Dale and I'll be back with Sam right after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Sam. How you doing tonight?
Good. Thanks for having me. First time on the show, so I'm excited and happy to be here.
Well, we appreciate it. We had one of your running around buddies, Andrew Abbott's been on the show with us before. Of course, we've had a lot of the coaches down there, Coach Ladner and Coach Barry and John Cox, a few people like that, and Jack Dunnigan. But we do appreciate you coming over, and you are, just tell us about what you're doing now, maybe a little bit about your background, how you got to Mississippi.
Yeah, so I'm Sam Skylar. I am the Southern Miss beat reporter for the Hattiesburg American. I started here in September, so it's crazy. It's already March. Time's going by fast. But so I'm originally from Minnesota. Grew up in the suburbs of the Twin Cities. Lived there really my whole life until I went to college at Michigan State for 4 years, and then graduated this past spring in May. Moved down to Fort Lauderdale area for an internship with the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, which was an awesome experience. Then was able to turn that into a job. So I came right from South Florida and drove here to Mississippi. Had never been to Mississippi at all before moving here, and so wasn't really sure what to expect, but I'm really enjoying it so far. It's been a treat. I live here in Hattiesburg, and it's a really nice area, so getting to know a lot of the people and kind of the culture, it's been a pretty cool experience.
Cool.
Yeah, well, let me ask you a couple of questions about your Michigan State days. What's more important up there to the Michigan State sports fans? Is it basketball or is it football?
I'd probably say basketball, but they don't have a very good team this year, at least for their standards. Mm-hmm. And so people are starting to get a little frustrated, and some people are even wanting Tom Izzo to retire or whatever. They're probably going to end up sneaking into the tournament, but I'll tell you right now, they'll maybe win a game and then just lose, because every time they'll beat a team like Northwestern, then they lose to like Ohio State the very next day. It's been like that the entire season. And then, football, they've had their run. They made a college football playoff and stuff, but I think just also right now in the new era of college football and NIL and conference realignment, I don't necessarily think that it helped Michigan State in a big way. So I'd go basketball.
Well, tell us about as far as the Southern Miss. Now, you cover most of the Southern Mississippi events. Let's start off with basketball, because basketball might have concluded last week. I'm not, we'll know more about it, I guess, Sunday, if they do come out with an NIT or that extra NIT, ever what they have. But, the season, of course, was kind of mixed. There was a lot of injuries. Even the coach for the men's team, all were at one time on the disabled list. Was that the kind of the roller coaster season, as far as you just couldn't keep everybody healthy?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a wild season. And for me personally, when I write basketball stories during the season, like, I don't write game recaps. I'm supposed to just find some sort of different angle, maybe a feature or something like that. But it felt like every single game I was writing about a new player getting injured, or then when Jay Ladner went down, it was a lot about that. And so it just felt like all that stuff just never ended. It was constantly just somebody getting hurt, or the whole Andre Carmelo NCAA waiver thing took up the first month of the season. And so, last week was obviously a very frustrating game, getting upset again in the Sun Belt tournament, still have not won a game in that tournament. And, it's a tough balance, because I think we all saw that when they're at their best, they can really beat anyone in the Sun Belt. But when they're at their worst, they can also lose to anybody. And so, it was kind of a hard balance of how much slack do we cut them for all the injuries and Jay Ladner being out for the last month, and then trying to come back and coach this week, and obviously things are different from this. So it's tough, and I think that a big talking point, or I would assume a big emphasis this offseason, is how can Southern Miss find the right players, find the right approach to be able to win games in the tournament, because obviously, based on how rules were changed for the NIT and everything like that, I mean, you can go 0-10 or 0-20 or whatever in the conference regular season and then still make the NCAA tournament. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach that.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the NCAA tournament for just a minute, especially the men's bracket, before we get to the girls basketball at Southern. But it just seems that some good teams could be left out of the tournament this year, because I know it's a field, they call it now a field of 68. It used to be the 64, but now it's a field of 68. But it just seems like with all the upsets, but just looking at the SEC is fixing to have their tournament this weekend, and if you ask me who would be the favorite, I would tell you maybe 5 teams to start with, and maybe everybody in the tournament, because it just seems like that it's so even in a lot of these conferences. It's like you said, Southern Miss and the men's can beat any team in the conference, but they seem like they can lose to any team. Is it getting that close to each other? Because it just seems like when Southern Miss goes on the road, at least this year, they didn't come back with many wins. But what's your thinking on any tournament? What really good team could be left out?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff about Indiana State. They've been kind of a fairy tale story this year. And, last I checked, some people on Twitter were saying that they could potentially be left out of the bracket, or maybe they're on the bubble or something like that. And I think that'd be a pretty, damn shame if they were left off, because, who doesn't want to see Indiana State? Obviously, Larry Bird is the whole deal there. But, fun teams like that are kind of what make the tournament fun, A team that, is going to be an underdog probably, and, upsets are what make March Madness so special. And, if it were up to me, I would leave my Michigan State Spartans out of the tournament, but they're probably going to make it. And, I think part of it has to do with the brand and the money and things like that. But, Indiana State, I think they're well deserved. And I think they actually played Michigan State this year, if I'm not mistaken, in the Breslin Center. And I think that they took them down to the wire, but Michigan State maybe pulled it out. But I think that's
you're not old enough to remember this, but I remember that matchup between Indiana State and Michigan State, and I'd never heard of Indiana State. I just knew Indiana, the state of Indiana, was a basketball playing state. It didn't matter what high school or what college, everybody could play basketball up there. But I'd never heard of this Larry Bird until we got to the tournament. Never seen him on TV or anything. And then all of a sudden you started seeing him play and say, does this guy ever miss a shot, And, how's he doing it? Because he's, but he was a phenomenon. Of course, Michigan State had the great Magic Johnson, who, he was one of the best to ever play also. But that's what interested all about the tournament is the teams like your Indiana State or something like that. Let's talk a little bit about the girls basketball. How did you think Southern Miss? Because they had a little better record than the guys. The guys ended up 16-16, but the girls were like 18-13, and they did at least win a game in the conference tournament. What'd you think about their season?
Yeah, I think they had a pretty decent season. Obviously last year they ended up, with a share of the conference regular season title, and then ended up dropping down to the 6th seed. But they had a really up and down season too, where they would, they started off 7-0, and then they lose 7 games in a row, then they would win 4 in a row, then lose 4 in a row. And it kind of went like that for the first, really until February, once they kind of got hot and went on a little winning streak there, and then. Ended up having that fight and then a couple suspensions and lost a couple games because of it. But, in that Coastal Carolina game in the conference tournament, they looked really good. It was kind of close, going into the third quarter, and then they really started separated in the second half. Dom Davis was obviously very banged up, I think, down the stretch here, and I think he kind of saw that in the second game. When they really just got destroyed by a good James Madison team. And so I think it'll be very interesting to see what ends up happening with this team next year, because obviously they lose Dom. But Jacoria Bracey, was a really, really nice player for them this season. And she showed up big time in the first game of the conference tournament. And then I believe she's still got another year of eligibility. And then, that second game against James Madison, they just didn't really show up. It was, once it was 33-8 in the second quarter, it was pretty much over already, even though I think they maybe cut it down to maybe 10 or 20 or something, or 15 or something at one point. But,
yeah,
it was pretty clear that, it just wasn't going their way at all in that game.
Yeah. What do you, because since you got a little Big Ten background here, I saw an interesting report yesterday, I believe it was, that Fox TV has reached out to maybe CBS and ABC to see if they could pool their money together to find a way to keep Caitlin Clark in college basketball for one more year, because technically she's got one more year because of the pandemic year that she played as a freshman. What do you think about that? How's this NIL and, well, of course, we won't get into the transfer portal yet, but is this NIL ruining our college sports?
I think that it's definitely a disadvantage for schools like Southern Miss or other, Group of 5 schools that, just don't have as much funding as the big-time schools. And, I think it does put them at a competitive disadvantage. I think, though, that Will Hall has been doing a really nice job over the last month or two of pushing really hard to kind of get this NIL here at Southern Miss, get it going. And, because they really didn't have a collective here until about a year ago when To the Top, it had been in existence since NIL became allowed in 2021. But now it's really sort of taken off over the last month, and it'll be interesting to see how far they're able to go with it because, obviously Southern Miss is just a smaller school than an LSU or a Michigan State, a Michigan, Ohio State sort of deal, where when there's just less students, there's less people who can give money, and I think that's a big factor. And with the Caitlin Clark stuff, it's pretty crazy just to see how much she's revolutionized women's college basketball, and it's really become must watch TV. I remember I think maybe in January Iowa was playing at Maryland one night, and I just flipped it on, and I was like, wow, I didn't turn it off. I watched the whole game just by myself, and I haven't really done that for a lot of women's college basketball games in my life. But I'm just watching her, and everywhere she goes, she's selling out crowds. I saw, I follow a lot of people from Minnesota on Twitter naturally, and because the Big Ten tournament is there this week. Or was there?
Yes.
And they completely sold out because of Caitlin Clark. They had general admission standing room only tickets, and they were on a first come first served basis. And people lined up at 9 a.m. when the game started at 5 p.m. And they have a skyway system, and it apparently was a mile long line just to people trying to get in to watch. Which is it's really crazy, and I remember just kind of imagining or joking earlier in the winter, imagine if Iowa somehow came to Reed Green Coliseum to play Southern Miss, and how the place would be packed, it'd be sold out. It would be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, because I'd definitely be trying to get a ticket to the game for sure. Well, listen. Let's talk about, of course, now, baseball is just getting started, and that may be a conversation for a later time. I know they're 10-6 as they enter the game against Alabama this Tuesday, and then, they got Marshall coming in for a weekend series. But how is everybody's concerned about the pitching and the hitting, so tell us about the pitching and the hitting.
Yeah, the bats were kind of the storyline through the first couple weeks of the season. They were doing okay, getting guys on base, particularly with walks. But, they just weren't able to drive in those runs for a really long time when they're stranding runners on base. And I think a lot of the season, at least from the batting perspective, has been Christian Ostrander and the staff trying to figure out, who is best in which spots. And I think now they are definitely starting to realize that. And you saw that, this weekend against Louisiana Tech with all the runs that they really put up against them. Billy Butler has been a massive addition to the lineup. I think if you were to ask Christian Ostrander if he regrets not giving him starts in the beginning of the season, he'd probably say yes, because he's really been that good. Hitting home runs, getting on base, doing it all. And really, Dalton McIntyre is another guy who's come on really nicely. Over the last couple of weeks, I believe he's got an 8-game hitting streak now. And is doing it with speed. He gets a lot of singles, but to have that at the top of the order to just get another runner on base is huge and very valuable. Slade Wilkes is kind of he got off to a slow start, but he's come along the last couple of weeks, and Carson Paeto's probably been just the most consistent, I would say. But their issue is that it really kind of falls off right now at the bottom of the order. I believe the catchers are hitting 196 combined this season, which is obviously not good at all. So they're trying to figure that out. We saw Jacob Keys get his first appearance of the season on Saturday. And they've got Tucker Stockman and Lawson Odom trying to, figure out who can kind of emerge from that group. And then, Ozzie Pratt's kind of falling down the lineup too. So, I think they're trying to figure out the depth right now. And then from a pitching standpoint, it was pretty good for the first 2 games this past weekend against Louisiana Tech. And then, yesterday's game was just a disaster. And Christian Ostrander said on his radio interview with, it wasn't John Cox, it was Jack Duggan actually, afterward, that, it was probably one of the worst pitching performances he's ever coached. And, I don't know much about, I've only been around here, so this is my first season on the baseball beat, so I don't know which particular game would be comparable, but they used 12 different pitchers. Many of them couldn't pitch a full inning. 3 of them had it was their Southern Miss season debuts and didn't really go very well. And so I think right now from a bullpen standpoint, they've got to figure out, they've got a couple guys that they know are solid, but after that, they need just some help from a depth perspective.
Sam, this is Marshall, and I kind of, in our pre-interview conference, so to speak, I told you I was a timekeeper, and it looks like we've hit our mark, my friend. We appreciate you taking time to be with us and share with us on our show this week. Thank you for taking the time to be with us, Sam. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I want to ask you to hold on just a minute. Dale and I are going to take a break to hear from a sponsor, and we'll be back with tonight's final segment of the Brouhaha right after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back to tonight's final segment. Old Sam talking all things USM sports. We appreciate him. Sam Squire, beat writer, Hattiesburg American, Southern.
Spell his last name for me.
I can take a shot at it, but now I can't guarantee it. But it says it says Squire, and I said like the way I would say square is square, so SQUARE, Squire.
It's SKLAR.
Got a K in it.
SKLAR. Scalar. That's how we would pronounce it down here.
Yeah.
But he's from the north.
He's from up there in Minnesota.
Way up there. He's been from the cold country. Can you imagine living in Minnesota and Michigan all your life?
Well, he's fixing to find out about what's
well, he can walk outside today probably and see spring, summer, fall, and winter.
Yeah.
It just depends on what time of day.
That sounds like a James Taylor song. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. Just call me. You got a friend. I'll tell you what, buddy. Just call me.
Okay.
If you need a friend, give me a call.
Okay. Well, listen, I enjoy my 30 minutes with you a week. I think that's good for me. I don't need to call you.
That's plenty. That's more than enough, isn't it, brother?
Yeah.
Listen, I got a question for you. It's going to be the last question of the night.
Okay.
And, I read a deal. It's public knowledge. Lane Kiffin has increased his staff up there by the hiring of an assistant or an analyst.
Yeah.
And the guy he hired was a former defensive coordinator, former head coach at Mississippi State, a gentleman named Zach Arnett. A lot of people were fussing about that.
Who?
I just read on the internet.
Man needs a paycheck.
Well, why would that be a problem for anybody? These analysts are the way to go. It looks like. It works for Nick Saban at Alabama, and I guess Kiffin's kind of learned up that. Maybe they all get analysts now.
I do know a true story that never happened.
A true story
that never happened.
Oh my gosh, we're going to put something true on the Brouhaha.
Saban was going to hire Freeze as an analyst.
Yeah.
After not the year he got fired, but the year after.
I remember that.
And the SEC commissioner begged him not to hire Freeze.
Well, I can understand that's a little different situation than Arnett.
What, really?
Oh, yeah. Do the math.
This cross state lines, baby. This cross state lines.
Yeah, that was the SEC commissioner put the coitus on that. But guess who's back in the SEC? Time heals a lot of things, does it not, Dale?
It always does.
It does. And it probably, go ahead.
Richard Nixon got, he went out to California back in the 60s and says, "You'll never be able to talk bad about me again. I'm finished with politics." 6 years later, he's elected president of the United States.
I'll be.
So everybody can rebound.
Well, I made a statement one time I was finished with politics, and I believe it's true. I believe I'm done. But anyway, I think we're done, Dale. We're about out of time.
Are we? Okay.
Yeah, we are. I've enjoyed it. It's good to have you back, brother.
Always good to be with you for this short time on Mondays.
Yes, sir.
Tuesdays.
Dale and I.
Tuesdays.
Yeah.
What
Get
day
your story
of the week?
straight, Dale. Good gracious. I mean, it ain't that good to have you back, but anyway, we do the best we can. You guys remember now you can follow us on Facebook at the Brouhaha, and we got all our shows cataloged for you on our YouTube channel at the Brouhaha, and you can check us out on that at will, on demand. That's the way we like to perform, on demand. You demand it, and there we are. But anyway, we've come to that time in the show where it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
And we'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Get us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.